Welcome to Sam's Russian Adventures and welcome to a windy spring day here in Vladimir in Russia, a place where I've lived for over 20 years. Now in today's video I'm going to talk a little bit about all the Americans that are moving to Russia and why are they moving here. To start with, I'm going to tell you where I've got this information from. I take 3 phone calls every Monday. After an hour, the phone calls will start, where I help people that are potentially interested in moving to Russia. So if you're thinking of perhaps moving to Russia because Russia have relaxed the residency rules and now you can come to Russia and pretty much immediately receive residency here, and because of that, obviously loads of people are now interested in having calls with me. The calls with me are completely free. I'm not selling anything. I'm not trying to convince you to buy any services. It's just my advice based on my experience and knowledge of living in Russia. And because I get to speak to so many Americans now and they tell me why they want to move to Russia, I'm able to make a video like this and tell you the reasons that they give me for wanting to perhaps come and move to Russia and try to live here. In these Russian neighborhoods, there's always such a huge contrast of different houses. We've got the 5-floor panel house over there, and it seems that there's always so much junk in some of these gardens. This guy's definitely into his off-roading look. So typically there's 3 main reasons that Americans give for wanting to move to Russia. The first reason is because they're unhappy with the way things are in their country. Either they're unhappy with the price, the cost of living, right? Or they're unhappy with the government, or they're unhappy with the kind of modern woke culture. And it's obviously well known that Russia is kind of anti-woke. And so a lot of people see Russia as a way to move somewhere that doesn't have those same kind of modern values that the US has. These are the letterboxes, look. It's springtime and everything looks kind of miserable. That is spring in Russia. The next category of Americans want to come to Russia to find a wife. Now it's a very interesting one because we start the conversation talking about, I don't know, something about their lives, and then 5 minutes in the conversation turns to how difficult is it for me to meet Russian women, and you know, is there a site that I can meet them on, and blah blah blah. And I think some of these people still have the mindset of how it is that Russian girls were desperate to leave Russia in the 90s and move to the US. And some of these people, they tell me about their other relationships they've had, the times they've been married already in Russia, and they're thinking of coming back and finding another wife. This is interesting, right? You've got the old house and then you've got the new house stuck on the side of the old house. Perhaps the grandparents live in the old part and the family live in the new part. Now of course I understand why American men would want to come to Russia for the women. At the end of the day, Russian women, completely different mindset to women in the US. They take care of themselves, I'd say, a lot better than the typical average American woman does. And also because they don't have that woke mindset, it's obviously, you know, a lot more refreshing. And especially those who are, I'd say, over 30, 40 years old, they've got a kind of traditional mindset, whereas a lot of the younger women, they're businesswomen. They're, you know, out grinding every day. just like in any other capitalist country. We've got a few cool cars here. And of course, women who have studied English at school and at university, who probably work in the hospitality industry, well, they're going to be really interested in meeting American men because, well, that's something that they've, you know, studied and learned all their life, right? And so if they meet an American man that, well, speaks English, it's great for them. I guess in a way that man could be considered exotic. It's almost like if I'm in the UK and I meet a Russian girl, right? It's like, wow, a Russian girl, it's like so exotic and different. And I think that's why a lot of Russian women are really interested in meeting foreign men or American men. And of course, Russian women are a breath of fresh air compared to your typical American or British woman, right? They're completely different, and they are very supportive of their boyfriend or husband. So yeah, the mentality of a Russian woman, a very strong, determined Russian woman who will also look at you and respect you for your qualities. I know in the US and the UK, if you go to a bar and there's a beautiful woman in there, the chances are that she's been treated like a queen for her entire life. And so she might have what's known as queen's disease, where she feels that she's the best person in the room and she'll only speak to you if you're a famous football player or something like that. Whereas the Russian women, they won't look so much about the fact that you're this amazing, you know, star of the world. They'll look at you for who you are. And if you're a hard-working person who brings in a good or stable income, somebody who's dependable, reliable, somebody who has goals for their lives, well, they're going to look at these attributes and respect you for being you. You don't have to be a multi-millionaire sportsman in order to be liked by a beautiful Russian woman. And I guess one of the reasons for this also is because lots of Russian women are incredibly beautiful. So if all of the beautiful women were just really stuck up, then, well, they'd never have a relationship with anyone, because they're not especially amazing being beautiful, because typically most Russian women are beautiful. Check out this house here. So interesting how houses are just together, right? You've got this massive house here and then this thing next to it, right? Although at the same time, I've known quite a few foreign men that come to Russia just for the women, only for the women. They don't really like Russia, and they don't really care about learning Russian or knowing anything about Russia at all, because at the same time they come here to find a wife, they marry a Russian woman, and then they don't have to even interact or do anything, because their Russian wife will do absolutely everything for them. And then the third reason is the cost of living. In America, they realize that they'll never be able to have the house of their dreams. They'll never be able to live, essentially, the American dream. The way that their parents or grandparents were able to move up that kind of corporate ladder, purchase a nice house in the suburbs, have a disposable income that they can kind of travel around and live a better life. But they realize that in Russia, the prices are obviously a lot different. Now, obviously, if you're going to purchase a house in the center of Moscow or something like that, then yeah, it's going to be expensive too. But if you're going to come to a region such as this one and many of the other regions around Russia, you're going to get way much more on average for your money. Now, there's a couple of important things to remember, of course. If you're going to move to an area such as this one, then the salaries are going to be lower. So yes, the cost of living is going to be lower, but so are the salaries. But if you move to somewhere like Moscow, the costs are going to be higher, and so are the salaries. What do you think of this house? I don't know, it's almost too elegant, isn't it? We've got a castle here. I think it's like the front of the castle, and we've got more castle going on behind it. Interesting style of build, right? Who's decided to build a house like that? But then there's also a lot of people in the US that have got some equity, that have got a house that they can sell, perhaps pay off the mortgage, and use the remaining money to come to Russia and purchase or to build a house on a nice little plot of land where they can have a few animals, grow their own vegetables. That is one of the things that a lot of Canadians and Americans want to do. They want to live in a village just outside of the cities and have a nice house with some nice countryside, some trees around, some farmyard animals, and just kind of live off grid. And in Russia, it's very cheap, well, a lot cheaper than in the US to do that. It's not very often that here in Russia you see houses with shutters on them, on the windows and the doors. One of the distinct differences with neighborhoods like this that I'm walking in now, everybody's built their houses individually. Some of them are very old, some of them are pre-Soviet, some of them are Soviet, some of them are spaces where houses would have existed before, they've knocked them down and they've built their own house. So you've got like mini mansions next door to kind of crumbling like pre-Soviet structures. This isn't the nicest neighborhood in the world, to be honest. But look at this, this is interesting, look. I think this is so that the cat can get inside, back inside the window. What do you think? And so a lot of the Americans that want to come to Russia actually want to come for all three reasons. They understand that they would like to come, perhaps find a wife and start a family in Russia. They understand that if their kids were to attend university here, that they wouldn't be paying an arm and a leg like in the US. They understand that healthcare is free in Russia, not like the US. They understand that we don't have the woke culture. Oh, the dogs have heard me coming. They understand that in Russia we don't have all the pronouns and all the different genders and people going to the street and shouting that they are this gender and they're being misidentified or whatever. We don't have any of that stuff. Whew. I know a lot of Americans really are worried about that. They're worried about their kids being indoctrinated or coming home from school and saying that they've decided that they're not a boy or a girl anymore and all that kind of stuff. A lot of Americans, especially traditional Christian values Americans, they're really worried about the future direction that their country is heading in. It's a nice brick, isn't it? Another of the key concerns of Americans is safety. Safety of them, safety of their family. In Russia we don't have the whole gun culture, the whole kind of gangs and drive-by shootings and all that kind of stuff. And that is a big thing, I guess a big difference, I should say, between Russia and the US. Also, most of the people that I speak to do not believe the anti-Russian narrative, the anti-Russian propaganda. they're tired of what they're told on their mainstream media, and they're also really interested to learn about Russian traditions and customs. They want to integrate into society. Well, most of them do, I think, anyway. This guy's created his own little parking space for him. Look, he's got it boarded up. I don't know how. Ha, that's funny though. I love the window frames, the decorations around the window frames, really nice, right? And then finally, you've got the people that just want to come here and retire. They've given their whole life to America, and now they just want to come to Russia to retire, to learn something new, and to feel that they're in a country that cares about them. Because a lot of Americans feel completely disillusioned that their country is just full of lies. Check this out. Wow. Would you like to have this castle? That's pretty incredible, isn't it? Ha! I think something that a lot of people make the mistake with is they think that they have to hate where they were from in order to love Russia. And this isn't true. I love the UK and I love Russia. I love being in Russia. You don't have to take sides. I don't think there's any country that I hate. I think every country has got pluses and minuses, and where you live, if you choose to live somewhere, it doesn't mean that the other places are rubbish. The world is massive, there's loads of places you can live, and it's fine to try somewhere else. You don't have to live where you were born, and it doesn't make you a traitor if you move somewhere else. Russia might be amazing for some people and a nightmare for others, and that's fine. It's about personal choice, about doing what you want to do in your life. One final note is, I know a lot of people are going to be worried about taking the risk, right? Or what if you move to Russia and you don't like it? You don't have to think of everything as so permanent. Russia has this option now for you to apply for residency under what's known as the shared values visa. And you can come to Russia and you can apply for residency on arrival. But if you don't like it, you can move on and go somewhere else. You haven't made the worst mistake of your life if you move to Russia and you realize it's not for you. You can move somewhere else. The world is massive. So I'd say to you guys that are thinking of moving to Russia is just think of it as one step at a time. The first step is to come to Russia, see if you like it. You might come here and love it, or you might come here and not enjoy it. But what have you lost? If you stay where you are, then the worst thing that can happen is you're on your deathbed and you think, I wish I'd moved to Russia.